Let me check if you're live. All right. So, hello everyone. Thanks a lot for joining in for our webinar on building serverless analytics with AWS Athena. So, for today's session, we have Ankit Seth, who's the founder and CEO of at DataViz. So, Ankit is a seasoned IT professional with over 11 years of experience working on various domains. So, he's a technology business leader, experienced in various domains like telecom, cybersecurity, travel and e-commerce, and he's currently running a company known as DataViz with a vision to participate in the creation and evolution of voice-enabled mediums and to enable people to use a primary medium to interact with technology for any means. So thanks a lot, Ankit, for joining with us for today's session. So
Thanks for having me, Shubham.
it's over to you now.
Sure, no problem. Can you just add my screen and then we can start up?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. Okay. Hi, folks. Good evening, I guess. It's 17:04. Okay. So, I've seen a few of the previous webinars that has happened on introductory series with serverless, and then the other session was an advanced level serverless. I'm picking something which has been there in terms of a lot of AWS services, but it's kind of a hidden gem service that I see when I go and talk to my customers and talk about how they can build various analytic solution with such services. And the service which I'm picking up today is an AWS Athena. Okay, so as I think Shubham already introduced me, my name is Ankit Seth. I'm CEO and founder of DataViz. You can find my contact details here. Hit me up on Twitter, and feel free to ask any questions that you have. Okay, so let's jump
Ankit,
in right away. Yeah,
can you just take this to the full screen, the presentation? Because,
sure, no problem. Is it
yeah,
better now?
yeah, perfect, perfect. Because in
Okay,
case
good.
if you have, all right.
Okay, good. So let's understand what is Athena. Okay, see, Athena is a simple, interactive service which would allow you to query the data that you have stored in form of a data lake into an S3. Okay, it has to be a structured data. It could be the CSV, TSV, or JSON file. Okay, so basically, you can run any interactive SQL queries on whatever data that you have stored in your S3 as a data lake. Okay, so let's talk more about Athena. Like, I'll give you a bit of background. It was first launched in 2016. Okay, uh, since then it has grown a lot, but people are kind of shy using this service because it's not one of those mainstream service when it comes to utilizing a bunch of different services available on AWS. Okay, in terms of pricing, it's very straightforward. For each terabyte, 1 terabyte of data that you are scanning, okay, you get $5 as your monthly bill. So if you're scanning up to 5 TB of data in a month, you'll be charged $5 and nothing else. Okay, and on top of that, see, whatever TDL statements that you are executing on your Athena in terms of create, alter, or drop tables, or if you are managing different partitions. Okay, or there are queries which are getting failed due to any reason. Okay, you will not be charged for those statements. Okay, That's one of the plus point that I see working with Athena as a service. Okay, then you have what it supports CSV, JSON, any columnar data format such as Paraquet or Apache ORC. Okay, so anything structured. Uh, like you usually have this data that you store from, if you're using RDBMS, then you are storing everything in form of CSV when the backup comes up, right? You can use that. Or if you are using NoSQL, then you'll have JSON. So either of the cases, whether you're using SQL, like relational or non-relational database, you can still use Athena as your an interactive analytics service. One of the key point when you work with Athena, so it's another a serverless platform. Okay, which means that as a user, you don't have to set up any infrastructure. Okay, you don't have to manage any infrastructure. You don't have to worry about high availability or disaster recovery, or any sort of storage management when it comes to managing your own data lake and your own data search service, right? So usually what you do is you set up few servers, then on top of that you install certain services, then you have to manage those servers, manage the storage that you're storing day in day out, right? And then keep on upgrading those services to make sure that you have the uh, good configuration available for you to search the data that you're storing, right? Now when you talk about Athena, Athena is, we are going to, part of this session, we are going to do certain practicals as well. But Athena is as simple as you can get in terms of, just putting something on S3. Okay. Connect that S3 bucket to your Athena Athena. Okay. And then simply create a table and start searching. That's the only thing that you have to do in terms of setting up a new service per se. Okay. Other than that, you don't have to worry about any underlying hardware, software. You don't have to worry about how much data you are scanning. So ideally, if you're scanning maybe 1 MB of data or 1 TB of data, Athena is going to manage that infrastructure for you. You don't have to do, any sort of maintenance or management in terms of managing the service. Like, if you're running something which is on a smaller data set, you have to shrink your servers. Or if you're, running a search for a large data set, you don't need to manage any kind of an hardware or software there. You simply execute a query and Athena would do rest of the stuff. Okay, so yeah, so you get an improved uptime. You don't have to worry about whether servers are available or not. It's going to be always available for you whenever you are executing a query. You don't have to worry about disaster recovery. Doesn't matter where you are. S3 also provides your 7 9 reliability. So in terms of data is always going to be available there in form of S3 bucket. And with that, if you do something with Athena, you can simply going and querying the data set right away without working out on what is going on underlying the service that you're running. Okay. Yeah, hardware independence, like it doesn't matter since you don't have to manage anything. Okay, you are good to go. Like, just connect the S3 bucket, uh, execute your query, and you're good to go. Okay, so let's understand. Now, see, we understood what is Athena. I give you a bit of background on, some more details about Athena. Now, let's talk about where you can use Athena. Okay, and see, idea is whatever product that you build. Okay, part of that product you always collect certain amount of data. And in this era where it's been said data is the new oil, right? So you always have a parallel analytical service that you're running on whatever product that you're building. Okay, whether you're building something for FMCG, whether you're building something for retail, finance, doesn't matter. For each and every product, you always need, for an example, in a simpler terms, you always need reports to accompany your product, okay, to give better insights to your end customers. Okay, now a usual setup of creating a reporting module, okay, is you if you're using a relational data set, I'll talk about in AWS terminology. If you're using RDS instances to run your product, then you would probably set up a multi availability zone cluster of your relational database, and then you're going to create connection to the read replicas of those RDS instances. Okay, so what happens is usually you are occupying connections from your RDS instances. So if you have an inflow of 10 user, it's going to survive. If you suddenly have inflow of 1,000 user, let's say, you'll have to increase your service to cater to a non business centric service like reports. Okay, so whatever product that you're building, the core function of that product may not be reports, right? So you always have you always give lower priority to the reporting module, right? But at the same time, reports are one of the essential modules which any end customer would want to use, right? So that's a clear paradox there, right? So what we usually do in that case is we create a read replicas which allows our reporting service not to interfere with our business centric services in terms of sales, or if it's an ERP, you're storing bunch of PUs and whatnot, right? So we create a separate service which again puts a load onto the same RDS cluster. Now with a given setup, what you could do is you could export using AWS data pipeline. AWS data pipeline has a native template available for you to export any tables data from your MySQL or RDS instance to an S3 bucket in form of CSV. So daily once, if you execute that, what happens is your daily data has been backed up to an S3 bucket. And second, your data is available in form of CSV, which would allow us to query that data set without even going back to the master RDS cluster. Okay, so that's one of the prime use case that I give to all of my customers, that if you use service like AWS Athena, what it will help you with is you don't have to put any load back to your primary RDS clusters to run such analytical service. So for whatever type of load that I want to run, okay, on my uh, analytics service, whatever type of data that I want to grab from my uh, you know data that has been stored in S3, I can directly do it because it's an actual replica of my database itself, right? So that's the benefit of using such service. Now what does it cost you to run an Athena in this scenario? Okay, if you're uh, creating the layout properly in terms of the data structure, it's not going to cost you more than one, like if you're not scanning more than 1 TB of data, 1 TB is more than enough for a reporting kind of a module, right? So it's not going to cost you more than $5. Second, if you're running data pipeline daily once, it's probably going to cost you around $1.5 a month. Okay, so in nutshell, you are creating a supplement for your reporting module for just under $10. Okay, so that's the benefit when you use Athena or a bunch of AWS analytics service together to give you the full pipeline of how to fetch different sorts of data whenever you need. Now let's understand few more use cases. So yeah, so if you're using S3 as your data lake, and you may not need a frequent access to your data, but you still want to have a query engine. Okay, query engine as in whenever you need, you should be able to search that data out. In that case, you could use Athena as a query engine for your data lake. Embedded SQL for direct access of data, and that's the exact use case that I just explained. That whatever data that you are replicating from your RDS, from your production database instances into an S3 in form of SQL, you could use Athena as your embedded SQL pipeline, where you have stored various queries, or even you can invoke different queries from outside, from over an API interface, or using Lambda, and then query the data set which is stored in form of S3 bucket. Logs, yes. So querying logs is one of the good use cases that you can get when you work with Athena. For example, if you have written your application in whatever language, and you're storing all your logs in form of S3 bucket, okay, you could use Athena to query various events or various uh, troubleshooting, in case of any problems that you're seeing in your product, right? So that's where Athena could be a really good help. Okay, querying database backups, exactly one of the similar use case, but at a different level. So for an example, if you're using S3 as a data archiving solution, in which for an example, I'm every 6 months I'm running certain procedures which would archive an older data set from my actual RDS instances into in form of data warehouse into S3, for example, as a data lake. What I could do is, if somebody wants to access a data greater than you know uh, some months, or some beyond the threshold of my live data set that I'm maintaining in my RDS, okay, I can use S3 and Athena to query those database backups. Okay, another two good use cases is time series and geospatial data. So as I mentioned, you bring any structured format into an S3, okay, and you connect that with your Athena, and it will help you to grab all sorts of analytics, and gives you a good amount of insights with good and negligible cost. Okay, now let's understand few limitations. So see, eh, like there are always two sides to the coin, right? So you need to understand uh, when to use services like Athena. Okay, so first point is, it's pricey. Okay, so you'll say, Ankit, just before the slide you were saying this, the pricing is really good, and it's not going to be an issue. But if you see the complete statement, it is pricey if not used right. Okay, what it means is, see, in let's take the same example of reports. Okay, if you have a need of somebody who's going to scan, for example, in every query, last 3 months, last 4 months, last 6 months of data, okay, you basically are being charged for the total amount of data that you are scanning from the data that you have stored in your Athena, in your S3 bucket. Okay, so if your data is not partitioned well, okay, what do I mean by partition is, so for an example, if you have a table, okay, and let's say it's a transaction table where you are storing transactions one after another, and you are storing everything by a date or a timestamp. Okay, so you have a date timestamp along with all the transactions. Now what happens in that case is, if you're putting, like, if you're exporting the same database into an S3, okay, and if you're scanning that database directly from Athena without doing any partitions, okay, what happens is, if I want to filter like for example, if I want to search a data of XYZ date, what do I have to do is I have to query the same table in the S3. Athena is going to scan the whole table before finding a smaller data set of that particular date, right? Versus if you partition that data into, for example, into year, month, and date, YMD, right? So what happens in that case is Athena doesn't have to scan all the rows which are stored in your database, in your table. What it has to do is it has to go directly to that particular date, since it knows the structure, the data is partitioned well. So you're not scanning the whole month's data, you're just scanning one particular date. And then if you have more condition on it, like I am looking for somewhere customer is equal to ABC and date is equal to this, so the date, so Athena would go for only that particular date, and then it will fetch only that customer's information from that particular date. Okay, so if you're not able to partition your data well, then using Athena would be a pricey for you. Okay. Second thing is the data fetching mechanism is in async mode, which would give you limitations if you're looking to retrieve data in a sync method. Okay. What does this thing mean? So see, Athena is an async SQL query and SQL data retrieving mechanism, which means that when I give a command to Athena, it's going to go invoke a query. Okay, and then it's going to start fetching the data, and the response that you'll get is, okay, this is your token number, you just go and wait till the time I find the data that you're looking for. Okay, so that's the mode that we have when you work with Athena. Okay, so if you have a need where, for an example, if you're looking for an interactive dashboards where people would click here and there, and then you want to display it right away, it's going to be difficult. Okay, I'm not saying it's impossible. We have done that. We have created dashboards in which we are using Athena as a mechanism. But yeah, the downside of that is you will see a lag when you're handling or when you're working with an async service. So ideally, a good use case for Athena is, for example, if there are, like, out of your whole reporting module, there are certain reports which demands a good amount of data. Okay, what you do is you put that aside in an async mode for your end customers as well. So what happens in that case is that when a customer sends that, okay, fine, I'm looking for transactions of last 6 months, fine, okay sir, I'll allow you to do that, but you need to wait till the time I'm done with my query. Okay, and then you send that query to Athena, let it run. Once the result set is available, you send notification back to the user, the data set is ready, right? So keep in mind this thing, that the retrieval mechanism or the data fetching mechanism is in async mode, which means you'll have to keep a wait in between your retrieval of data and invocation of a query. Okay, altering the data structure post data collection is not feasible. Yeah, so if you, like, see, when you're working with Athena, you have to be very cautious in terms of what is the structure of the data that you want to create in your Athena. Okay, so today you have 5 fields, tomorrow if you are having 7, you cannot simple do an alter there. Yes, you can add and remove partitions, which means you are adding more months or more dates, you can very well do that. But if you want to alter, for an example, there is a column and you want to change the type of that column, you cannot do that. Okay, once the table has been created. Okay, so keep this thing in mind, that altering the data structure post data collection is not feasible working with Athena. So yeah, that's the, I know we are a bit short on time, so I'm gonna jump on things quickly. So These are the use cases, these are the limitation, and this is the background of Athena. I'm going to jump towards the demo which I have of Athena. Okay, I believe everybody should be able to see my screen. Okay, so see what I've done is I've done a very simple setup: city, state, countries, right? So you see a country list here, cities and states, correct? So I want to fetch this data, which is stored in form of CSV, into my S3 bucket and load that data into Athena and start using it. Okay, let me close everything so that you kind of get the sense of what we are trying to do here. Okay, okay. So we have a data source here. Okay, let's try to go to Athena once again so that, yep. So see, this is how the view is going to look. Okay, on top, you will be able to see your query editor. If any queries that you have saved, okay, if you are using this, UI as your prime, research UI, where you have saved a lot of queries which you run, on ad hoc basis, you will see that here. You will see in history here. You will see all the data sources here. Okay, I've just created one and we are not going to do anything else other than that right now. Okay, yeah, this is the work groups you can create. Like for example, I have different projects within my company, and if I want to allow different user different permission in terms of what data that they can access, right? You can create different work groups from here. Okay, so we'll go back to the main thing in query editor. Okay, so now what we have to do is, see, understand the structure here. You have a data source, then you have database. Under database you have tables and you have views. Okay, it's the similar, uh, you know similar to what you see in normal relational data sets. Okay, relational databases. Okay, I have created a database already called city master. Okay, so we'll be creating table under that, but how to do that, right? Let's do it from scratch. So you see a link here, connect data source. Let's click on that. Okay, so as I mentioned, things are very simpler. What you need to do is you need to give reference to your S3 bucket. Okay, and give the number of column mappings, and give that feed to Athena, and you are good to go. Your data should get loaded into your data set. Oops, sorry. Let's click on it again. Yep. So you see query data in Amazon S3. This is what we are going to use. We are not going to use any common data sources like RDS. Okay, you will see a lot of stuff here. For example, CloudWatch metrics, DynamoDB, DocumentDB. We are not going to use anything at this point in time. We are simply going to use S3. Okay. Now metadata, we don't have any metadata at this point in time, so we are going to stick with what we have in terms of glue. Let's proceed to next one. So now connection details. Do you want to set up a crawler in AWS Glue to retrieve schema information automatically, or you want to add table and enter the schema information manually? Okay. Why I mentioned earlier that we don't really need to use glue is, it's a very small data set that we are importing right now in uh, Athena, and for that I don't need to do auto retrieval of the schema. So essentially what glue does is, whatever data structure that you have loaded in that S3 bucket, it's going to crawl the whole S3 bucket for you, and then it's going to retrieve schema information in terms of column name and everything for you. And then it's going to suggest that these are the fields that I see and this is the structure that I've seen in an S3 bucket. Do you want to continue with that, or do you want to do something manually? Okay, in our case we are going to do things manually because I want to make things quicker for you because of the timeline that we have. Okay, now let's understand. Okay, so you can create a new database here, but since I've already created one, I'm going to use that. But yeah, it's nothing new. So you can click create database here, just give a name here. But since we already have one, we are going to use that. Now, what is the table name that you give? I'll say I'm using a country master. Sorry. Now, see, this is the thing that I'm talking about, and let's read through the lines here. So you need to give. So if you're, for example, if your data is stored at this file, okay, please enter S3 input logs, which means you need to go till the directory of your S3 bucket. But okay, as I mentioned, it supports usage of partitions as well. So in that case, you can do something like this. So if you have your month and day available, okay, this is the structure that these guys are following. We can again put, till prime directory, and it's going to fetch the rest of the stuff. Now for us, it's very simple. Okay, I'll have to copy the ARN from this. Where is my ARN? Yeah, it's from here. Okay, so I'm going to do S3 colon double slash. This is my ARN city sample, not ARN, the bucket name city sample Athena. And in that, we have our file country.csv, right? So that's what we are going to use. We click on next. What happened? Okay, my mistake. We need to put another slash at the end of it. So which kind of file it is? It's a CSV. I have to delete this two files so that we don't get wrong data. Okay, fine. So this is the CSV file. So you can, as I mentioned earlier, you can select, any structured data format. In our case, we are using CSV. Now this is the funny thing. Okay, since you're doing everything manually, you'll have to identify what are the names which are already part of the file that you're uploading, and then you need to map that with a column type. You can do bulk add as well. In our case, it's very simple, so we are not going to take much time. Country name, ISO2. I'm going to keep everything as string because I don't have any other data, so it's okay to go with this. So I have just noted down the column names that I need in continent code in form of notepad here, so that I don't, sorry, create that. Okay, and this is, oops, it's not double, it's the timestamp. Okay, so keep an eye on this. Okay, update that you don't do any mistakes in this column types or column names. Whatever you select here, it's going to remain in your data set. So next day, if you want to change anything, you would have to delete the table and create it again. Otherwise, you will not be able to alter any data types once it is created. Next, okay, so do you have any partitions in this set? And that's where you define a partitions. But in our case, there is no partitions. I'm simply going to click on create table. Now, right now, what it does is it's going to connect to S3 bucket, try to see where is the CSV file, take that CSV file in, and it's going to map all the fields from those CSVs into the fields which we have given. And understand this thing, it also will give you, what kind of a query it's executing. Okay, so this is see, either you can go with that complete connect data source thing. Okay, if you already have a database connected, and if you just want to create another table using some specific S3 bucket, you can simply execute such queries as well about creating an external table and whatnot. Okay, let's just wait for a few seconds. It says query is successful, which means our table is being created. Let's wait for a few seconds for this thing to get loaded. You should be able to see the table here. Let's just wait for a few seconds. Should get loaded, shouldn't take this much time. Yeah, okay. This is here. So in city master, this is the data set. This is the table that we created. If you click on that, why is taking too much time? Okay, yeah. So you should be able to see the different fields which we had loaded. Okay. Now let's see similar thing to what you usually do when you have, uh, when you write a normal SQL query, right? Yeah. So this is exactly what we have. Okay. In my CSV, I forgot to remove the header. Okay. So if you are using glue, this thing will not happen. But since we did everything manually, ideally we should remove the header column since we are mapping that up directly. Okay. So yeah, anyways, other than that, created at and updated at didn't came because I think either I'm missing the file name, like field name here, or it doesn't have that data. Oh yeah, it doesn't have the data. It was something that I was creating manually. Okay. Okay. So it doesn't, like in CSV file, there is no data of created at or updated at. I copied that from one of the table structures that we had. And in that we had this two fields which was auto populated by the database itself. Okay, so you should be able to see, like for example, United Arab Emirates ISO 2, ISO 3, and then you'll see a country code, then you will see a continent code as well as in Asia. Okay, now in this thing, you could do whatever you want. For example, I want to search where country name is India. Okay, let's execute this query. Okay, as you can see, whatever type of data that you want to scan, okay, you can scan it directly, from your interface. Now understand one thing: there is no physical infrastructure deployed after this service. Okay, what you have essentially done is you have kept your data into S3 bucket, which you want to use it right away for searching any sort of data. Okay, you can in fact create views as well in this. Okay, we don't have multiple data set right now, otherwise I would have shown you this. But you could create different views out of it as well. So if you, for an example, in your relational data set, if you are using this to simply copy all the data set from there to here, and then you want to use it as a reporting module, and in that, if you want to have multiple joins, okay, you can create multiple views out of it and use it to query any sort of data from that particular view as well. There's no limitation as such. Okay, now understand this thing: runtime 0.39 second, and this is what you are charged for. Okay, so see, every time, let's do select star from country master. Let's do another search. You see this data scanned 18.2 KB. Okay, it went to search, all the data which is there in that data set. And when we do where, like for example, country name is equal to Fiji. Okay, run query. You see this? See, if we are trying to search something which is at the end of the table, it's going to search throughout the whole data set. But if you remember when you did search with India, that is 18.2 KB. So see, in either of the cases, okay, it's going to search through whole data set that you have loaded, and it's going to give you a result because from the principles of normal SQL, right? So you go and try to search the whole table and see what are the columns, okay, what are the rows which are matching up with whatever data that you want to search for, whatever query that an SQL engine got, right? Now that's where the beauty of partition would help you if you are using or if you're creating any sort of analytical pipeline out of it. Okay, so if you're using, for example, if you're storing multiple transactional data which is spanned across multiple days or months or year, you should create a structure which would allow your user to search for specifics with specific dates. So for example, if I'm looking for something which are transaction in which username is this of in last 3 months, I'll not be scanning the whole table. I'll be scanning only the data which is partitioned only for that 3 months. Okay, that's the beauty of you know having partition data within Athena, because if you want to be very cost if you want to run something which is very cost optimized, then you should have partitions enabled on your on your data sets. Okay, so with that, I think Shubham, we are done from my side. I think we are on time. I guess it's what, 5:45.
Yeah, Ankit. We still have like 17 minutes left, and
Fine, I think we are good. Are there any questions or anything coming
yeah,
up?
yeah. So there are two questions as of now. So
Cool.
one is how to handle the data consistency between RDS and S3 data lake.
Okay, so in form of data consistency, so I believe what you meant is how to keep data in sync between your production database and S3 bucket. See, ideally, whenever you are using Athena or whenever you're using any kind of analytical pipeline, okay, I would recommend that you educate your customers, your end customers, to have an offline data store, which means you always see a gap of 24 hours, for an example. Okay, so what I do is I always collect data once 24 hours, sync my RDS with my S3 bucket, which is going to give me a gap of 24 hours, so the user can search anything which is in last which is greater than last 24 hours. Okay, that will help you to get the consistency between your RDS and S3.
Right, and we have one more question from Akansha. How can we see in the interface, I mean, as a dashboard? So I guess this is for
Okay,
the.
how can we see in the interface? I mean, as a dashboard. Okay, so with see Athena is a simple query interface. Okay, which is as good as your SQL client. Okay, you can run any queries and it will plot details in form of a table. Now, if you want to run any visualization on top of that, you should uh, connect this to AWS QuickSight, which is going to give you a better interface, and you can plot good amount of visualization in form of a dashboard from the data that you have stored in S3 bucket.
Akansha has like suppose the analytics which we achieve in Google Analytics can be achieved here as well.
Suppose the analytics we achieve in Google Analytics can we achieve here as well. So you mean to say, like say in form of visualization, you could use QuickSight to do anything. How can we see in the interface? Okay.
Okay,
Uh,
no,
so
it's the
so
same.
yeah. So see, the way you are seeing different things in form of visual view when you open up Google Analytics, right? You could set up the similar thing in QuickSight. So ideally, what QuickSight does is QuickSight would allow you to run Athena queries on the fly. Okay, collect the data and show it in form of a dashboard. Okay, so the way you see things on Google Analytics, you can create similar dashboard on QuickSight, which is connected to your AWS Athena. Okay, and Athena has the data linked in form of S3 bucket.
Great. So we can just wait here for like 2 3 minutes since if we have more questions.
Sure, no problem. I was under the impression of 40 minutes. That's why.
No, but then it's great, like so, have it's good to have a time for the Q&As also, because sometimes there are a lot of questions.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, see, use Athena as a, you know, a query service for anything that you have within your product. So whatever kind of data that you're collecting, okay, start utilizing Athena, and it is very simple. If you see, it is very simple if you use it right. Okay, so that's something that there is a catch using in Athena. You don't need to go overboard in terms of searching the data. So the last thing that I explained in the demo is that thing only. So whether I'm searching something, for example, India and Fiji, this were like, if you see in the table, it's a different index. Okay, but every time whenever you run a query, it's going to scan the whole table in whatever query that you are running. And if that table is not partitioned, every query is going to result in the same amount of information. So it doesn't matter whether you are searching for maybe a result set which has one value to return, it's going to scan the whole data set. So ideally, the only caution that I give when you use Athena, if you're not using structured data, a very well partitioned data, then you are going to end up paying more for searching and querying the data set using Athena.
So Akanksha has one more question. Can you please elaborate the partition part if we have time?
Sure, we have few more minutes. We can
Yeah.
definitely take care of that. So, see, what I mean by partition is, for an example, if you have a table in your relational data set, which is storing any transactional information. Okay, so for an example, let's think of an e-commerce website, which is storing customer orders. Okay, in a database. Now, when you store that customer orders, you are always going to tag that transaction with a certain timestamp. Okay, that timestamp being year, month, and date, for an example. Okay, you can further partition that on hourly basis as well. Okay, now it depends on your need of querying that data. So if I have a dashboard on which I'm going to, for an example, say that how many orders I got per day. Okay, so what I would do is in my Athena, I configured partition till the day. Okay, so ideally, what you need to do is whenever you are storing the data in your S3 bucket, you put different directories. So in form of year, month, and date. Okay, that's the structure that you follow. So for example, 2020 is your year. In that, you will see 1 to 12 table representing 12 different months, and in that you see 1 to 31, 30, whatever days that you have, to represent multiple orders that you got on each day. Now that is the partitioning that I'm talking about. Now when you are uh, loading that S3 bucket into Athena, you need to map that partition so that whenever you are plotting, for an example, if I want to see end of day report for an e-commerce data store for date 4th September, okay. So in that case, my query through Athena is not going to scan the whole table, whole orders table. It's going to scan only that particular date. Why? Because the structure that we have created, it's partitioned into smaller segments. So I don't have to go out and search each and every partition. I just have to, I know which partition the data is in, and I simply pick that. Okay, it's like your cupboard, right? In each drawer you put different things, so you know what to fetch from which drawer. And exactly the same thing works with Athena.
All right. It's quite a good explanation now, Ankit.
I think people would relate that more, since
Yeah,
it's been
exactly.
some time. I think people are exhausting their cupboards now. There's no way for us to go out, right?
Yeah. All right, Ankit. Then we'll just wrap it up.
Fine, we are what, 8 minutes early. Okay,
We
good.
still have 8 minutes. I mean, we can still wait for 1 or 2 minutes. if we have some more questions.
Shoot questions, guys, whatever you have.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
not with respect to Athena. Okay, you can shoot anything with respect to serverless as well. uh, I've been working for a good amount on serverless, and I could help out with any questions that you have. Mainly when an hackathon is coming, right? If you guys are planning anything, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And I think I lost Shubham.
Hi. Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, let me know if there are any more questions coming in.
Okay, okay.
Guys, shoot any questions that you have on serverless, and yes, you're visible, Shubham.
Oh, all right. Mm, so Akansha has one more question.
Yeah, that's good. So I can connect Athena and S3 and QuickSight, and then we are good to go for the analytics data. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. So essentially, what happens is once you connect these three things, whatever query, whatever visualization, whatever dashboard that you are trying to select from your QuickSight, it would load the data directly from the S3, whatever you have stored in form of CSV or TSV, whatever you have. It's QuickSight, Akansha. Quick SIGHT. Let me put that up in command, but I cannot do that. So let me give reference. Sure.
Just turn off my video because my internet is fluctuating again.
No problem. No problem. I think there are some questions coming in form of okay, in form of hackathons. Okay,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm looking forward to this hackathon. Wanted to see what all people are thinking and what they could build with serverless. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, we still have 2 more days for the idea submission. So on 7th, we will be closing it.
Good. Okay. So guys, use serverless for anything. Like actually, any kind of idea is possible with serverless. Okay, as long as it is not time consuming or data crunching related stuff. So don't expect Lambda to give you scraping of 100 websites. It's not going to work that way because there are some limitations of running things with serverless. But a conventional web or mobile app could easily work with a complete AWS serverless stack. Uh, we've been using it for years now, and it's really robust. So you know, think through whenever you're doing submission so that uh, you have you know basically you have good spectrum of things that you could do when it comes to serverless. And the beauty of doing this is you don't have to worry about cost implications, because I think almost all the services either are you know less less resource consuming or free at all. So if you're using API gateway or Lambda, it's there are good amount of credits available for anybody to use. Okay, if you are working with any other services like uh, CloudFront or Route 53, yeah, there are charges. But other than that, almost all the services that you're going to use part of serverless has good enough credits available by default in AWS, so that you can run your ideas freely. Shouldn't be an issue. I think Shubham, we are good to conclude, I believe.
Yeah, Ankit.
Good. Yeah.
All right, Ankit. So thanks a lot for such a wonderful session, and I'm really sure it will be really helpful for our viewers while they are building and participating in the hackathon.
My pleasure.
Right. Okay.
Cool. Thanks a lot, guys.